Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Louder, where we challenge ourselves to know God more and to make the gospel louder in our own lives and in the community around us. We've been talking a lot in the last several weeks about who God is and what He does, His character and His attributes and His actions, all those different things. Today we're going to get to talk about the gospel. What is the gospel? Let's get started. The world and distractions are constantly getting louder around us. What if the gospel rose above all of that? Join us as we challenge ourselves to know God more and to make the gospel louder in our own lives and in the community around us. May the gospel get louder. So today I want to challenge us with two things, one for our own personal life and one for the way that we interact with the people around us. The thing for our own personal life centers around this idea of position versus relationship. And what does that mean? Think about this. If all this was over right now and you were able to go to Disneyland, you walk inside the gates of Disneyland, you see all these roller coasters, all these rides, all these activities all around you for you to be able to participate in. And you walk in and you sit down right in the middle and do absolutely nothing. You just sit down, you put your head down, you don't enjoy anything, you don't participate in anything. As your family, as your friends, as all the people around you are going around to all these different activities, having so much fun, participating in all these rides, going to all these shows, seeing all these fun things, and you just sit in the middle and do absolutely nothing. Now you're there, but you're not really engaging with it, and it kind of defeats the purpose of being there. And that illustration is very similar to what we're talking about today. I'm going to read a passage out of Ephesians chapter 2, and I just want to point out a couple things in it. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1, "As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live, when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our sinful nature and following its desires and thoughts." So what that's saying is we were dead in our sin. We were completely separated from God. We followed the world, we followed Satan, and we followed our flesh. We followed our sinful desires. Now we see in this next sentence the result of that. Like the rest, we were by nature objects of wrath. Because of our sin, because we chose to follow Satan, follow the world, follow our own flesh, we deserve the wrath of God. And we've talked a lot before about God's holiness, and God's wrath is a response to His holiness. God's anger towards sin is a defense of His perfection and His holiness. Because of our sin, we deserved wrath. We deserve punishment for our sin. In verse 4, "But because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions, in our sin. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus." So God raised us up, and He seated us with Him, and He created that position for us. Positionally, He raised us with Christ, and we are viewed in the same way as Christ is. Even though we fail, even though we sin, because of what Christ did on the cross, God views us in the same way that He views His own Son, as righteous and perfect and holy, because of what Christ did for us. In verse 7, "All this in order that in the coming ages He might show the incomparable riches of His grace expressed in His kindness to us in Christ Jesus." So God doesn't just leave us there. He shows us His grace and His kindness to us. There's a relationship there. He loves us so much that He doesn't just want to save us. He wants to have a relationship with us. He wants to show His grace and His kindness to us every single day. And then in verse 8, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works so that no one can boast. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." Now we were saved not by our own doing. We were saved because of what Christ did on the cross. There's nothing good enough that we can do to get into heaven. There's nothing good enough that we can do to be justified and righteous and holy in the sight of God, but it is by the work of Christ on the cross, His death, burial, and resurrection, that we can be made alive with Him and have a relationship with Him. So we weren't saved by our works, but we were saved for works. We were saved to be able to serve God. We were saved to be able to have a relationship with God and live in community and relationship with Him, glorifying Him with the things that we do every day. We were created for good things. There's so many good things in that passage, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into those things in the devotional that we have out today, as well as in our Zoom Bible study tonight for high school and middle school students at 6 p.m. We'll see you guys then. But the thing that I want us to think about is our position and our relationship. What is your position before God? Have you placed your faith in Christ? Are you forgiven? Do you have assurance that you'll be in heaven when you die? If you haven't done that, I challenge you to do that. Walk with God, place your faith in Him, give your life to Christ. Maybe you have done that before, maybe you have given your life to Christ before, but are you satisfied with just being in that position without a relationship? It can often be easy to just rely on God for saving us when we need Him, but every other time just forgetting about Him. So do you ever take your salvation for granted? Do you ever just put it to the side and just know that it's there when you need it, maybe when you get older even? If you relate to any of that, I know that I have fallen into those same things so many times throughout my life. I challenge you, dive into your relationship with God. God saved you for a relationship with Him, and He offers you so much in that relationship with Him, and He calls you to so much. He has a purpose for you. He's given you value and purpose that He wants to use you for special, amazing things. And in that, when we think about this salvation, when we think about what Christ did for us, how are you sharing that with the people around you? How can you make the gospel louder? How can you share about the saving work of Christ on the cross and His death, burial, and resurrection for us? So how can you share that good news with the people around you? Whether that be with your friends, with your family, or even with your neighbor. What does that look like to share this good news with the people around you? Because the world needs to hear this good news right now more than ever. So go and make the gospel louder. That's all I have for us. I hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully this has been encouraging and challenging to you as we think about a relationship with God and how we can share the gospel with the people around us right now. I hope you guys are doing well. We miss you. We're praying for you. Hopefully we'll see you guys on Zoom tonight. And make sure to check out our devotional for today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys soon.